Before every big football competition, we start predicting who might win, and we always pick the favorites with the big names. But once the competition starts, we often get disappointed by many teams. A lot of the powerhouses get knocked out early, and then there's that dark horse that no one even knew was participating. They develop and gain confidence throughout the competition and end up surprising everyone. But if we look back at every dark horse we've seen since we started watching football, whether they won or just went far in the tournament, we'll find they had a lot of big names playing for top clubs in Europe. And if the competition started over, they might do it again. But what Greece did in Euro 2004 is different. You can't really understand how they pulled it off, because they didn't have big names or experience in big competitions. They hadn't played in the Euros for 24 years. And before that, they only qualified for two other tournaments, the UEFA Euro 1980 and the 1994 FIFA World Cup. And they never won a game and scored just one goal when they lost 3-1 to Czechoslovakia, and they managed to collect 1 point with a draw against West Germany. And in the 1994 World Cup, they lost all 3 matches. That's why what they did in 2004 shocked everyone. Even the players and Greeks couldn't believe it themselves. So how did it all happen? Well, to understand it, we need to go back a bit to when they appointed Otto Rehagel as their manager in 2001. He had a ton of experience as he was the only one who passed 1,000 Bundesliga matches as a coach and player, as he liked to call himself a child of the Bundesliga. And later Jupp Heynckes was added to that list too. So from the day he arrived, he made it clear to everyone that they were all there for one purpose, to play for the team and the country. So they should put all their conflicts aside. By conflicts, I mean that most of the players came from the 3 biggest Greek clubs, and there was a lot of enmity between them. So Otto stressed that no matter where they came from, they needed to be a family and put the team above the individual. And they listened to him because he was so confident and stubborn, and when he would say something, he wouldn't change his mind even if he was wrong, and he never admitted that he was wrong in the first place. So for 3 years, he tried to call up the same players for the national team so they'd get to know each other well and create that chemistry you see in clubs, like they were playing together every day. So by October 2003, and after playing some great matches, they qualified automatically for Euro 2004 without needing a playoff, ahead of Spain and Ukraine. And the competition started on June 12, 2004, hosted by Portugal. Unfortunately for Greece, their group was tough, because they had Portugal, Spain, and Russia. No one expected them to do anything, and their pre-tournament odds were 150-1. And none of the players had ever played a game in the Euros before. It was their first time, and they didn't have time to just watch and learn. They had to play the opening game. But the players didn't feel any pressure. They just wanted to enjoy the competition. As Nikopoulos said, their goal for the group stage was to win their first match, since Greece had never won before. But what happened in the opening game was unexpected. Greece scored in the first 7 minutes, and that goal gave them so much confidence. So they scored again at the beginning of the second half with a penalty, and they were set to end the game with that score, but Cristiano Ronaldo scored a header in the dying minutes. So the result was 2-1. And that win was their first big motivation in the tournament, because beating Portugal, full of stars and on their home turf, was a huge deal. But it wasn't over yet. They had to face another powerhouse, Spain. Maybe the only thing that gave them some confidence was that they'd beaten them a year before in the Euro qualifiers. But that also meant Spain wouldn't underestimate them this time. That's why they ended up drawing the game 1-1 and were pretty lucky that day. The players even considered it the toughest game they had in the entire tournament, so getting a draw was a good outcome, allowing them to focus on the final group match against Russia, who were already out of the competition after losing their first 2 matches, and they had nothing to lose. And all the pressure was on the Greeks. So within the first 20 minutes, Greece was down 2 goals and could have conceded more. Luckily, they managed to score 1 goal and ended the match 2-1. That was enough to qualify for the next round, finishing second in the group. Even though they had the same points as Spain, they advanced because of a better goal difference. So, they went on to face France in the quarterfinals, the best team in the world and the defending champions, with great players like Zidane and Thierry Henry, who was the best player in the world at that time. On the other hand, Greece felt no pressure, they just had to give it their all. As Otto told the players before the game, "If we are to fall, then we fall bravely like Greeks." And that's exactly what they did. They won 1-0, and it was probably the best win in Greek football history. As Nikopoulos said, "In the end, we didn't just avoid falling, we won and got through. That game became a turning point. That's when we started to realize we could go all the way. So, they went on to face the Czech Republic in the semifinals. The Czechs were fantastic throughout the tournament. They hadn't lost a single game and had beaten teams like the Netherlands, Germany, and Denmark. So, they had only one choice, and that was to defend well like they did before. As Nico Politis said at the start of the game, since we faced great sides and defended well, we can keep a clean sheet. But I was wondering how we could score, and he was right. They defended well and didn't score, so they went into extra time. The only winning goal came in the 106th minute, sending them to face Portugal again in the final. On the other side, Portugal recovered from their opening defeat against Greece to reach the final, and they had a tough road to get there. As we said, they were in the same group as Greece, Spain, and Russia, and knocked out England in the quarterfinals in a crazy game decided by penalties. Then they kicked out the Netherlands in the semifinals, and they had a lot of great players like Luis Figo, Deco, Carvalho, and Cristiano Ronaldo. Cristiano wasn't the main star of the team because he was still young, but he was decisive in every match with his speed and energy. So Greece faced them again. By the way, the hotel manager where Greece stayed told them the final would be between Greece and Portugal. He even wrote it on the board, and everyone laughed, thinking he was crazy or he was making fun of them, because no one thought they would even get through the group stages, let alone make it to the final. Even the players didn't believe it, but they did it, and on July 4th, the big day came. Portugal had all the pressure because everyone expected them to win. So Greece took advantage of that and won again, 1-0. And they finally won the title that no one expected, not even their own people. And up to this day, no one really knows how they did it. But let's be serious for a moment. What they did wasn't just luck. Winning one match, or even two, could be a coincidence, but winning the whole tournament means they did something right. And all thanks to the coach, because from the day he arrived, he tried to change the mentality of the players, as he used to tell them that there's no such thing as a big or small team. Any side can win if they play well enough. He was a great motivator, which is important for weaker teams, because throughout history, whenever you see a team doing something exceptional, there's usually a coach behind them who's great at motivating and getting into the players' heads, turning them into soldiers who'd do anything for the coach. But Rehagel wasn't just a good motivator. He also had solid tactics. He played a more defensive and well-organized game. They were like a wall. A lot of people say they were like Atletico when they were dominating La Liga and the Champions League. That's why a lot of football fans hated Greece back then and wanted them to get eliminated. Usually, people root for the underdog, but everyone hated watching Greece because their matches were boring. The coach also used the man-marking technique, which wasn't common at that time. Each player had one player to follow. He also used players with good headers, both in defense to prevent aerial balls and in attack, as most of their goals were headers. So what they did wasn't a coincidence. In your experience watching football, you've probably noticed that a well-organized defense can make any small team fight for titles until the end more effectively than a good attack with a bad defense. Because if you score, the other team might score more against you, but with a solid defense, you can keep a clean sheet and try to score from every chance. That's why we keep seeing these kinds of teams win 1-0. And a small team with a solid defense always has a coach who's great at talking and motivating, making the players give 200% of their energy. That's why you see them so disciplined and running all the time. But this can backfire, as they get tired and lose energy throughout the competition. This was one of the reasons Morocco didn't make it to the final in the FIFA World Cup 2022. By the time they reached the semifinals, all their key players were either injured or exhausted and playing when they weren't fully ready. They also had been defending the whole tournament, but in that match, they decided to attack and left spaces open, losing their two strengths at once. Otherwise, they might have made it through. So there's no shame in playing defense if you have to. It usually leads to good results. That's what Rehagel did with Greece, making him the first foreign coach to ever win the European Championship, and still the only one so far. Unfortunately, Greece didn't build on this success. None of the players went to big clubs, and they didn't pass that success to the next generation or to their clubs. As the first Greek club to win any European Cup was this year when Olympiacos won the Conference League. But at least they did something they'll be proud of forever. I mean, even today, people stop them on the streets to thank them for that Euro.